And we are live with today's N10-008 Network Plus Study Group. Today is our day for study group. It is the pre-show. We're about 10 minutes from getting started. You can see the big clock on the desk says 11:50. So we're waiting until 12 noon. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Chat room is checking in. I could probably put up the question of the this question. We'll get that one to work. We'll reopen that one right there. Now we can put our virtual pin in the map. We've got that ready to go. I guess I could put the link. There you go. If you wanted to put your virtual pin in the map, you're welcome to do that from wherever you happen to be joining us from in the world. Let's see. We've got a lot to go through today. It's all Network Plus today. So, of course, our first question is about Security Plus. Chat room says, hey, is it possible to still take the 601? The SY0601 exam is available until July 31st. So absolutely you have time to get that 601 passed. So you can absolutely do that. Can this be recorded? Well, it is recorded. It will be available on my YouTube channel immediately afterwards to do that. Hello, Mal. Good to see you again. Thanks for joining us down in the islands. This is quite a group of questions I have for you today. It's all Network Plus. Are there major differences between the versions of the exams? I guess that depends on what you mean by major differences. Some people looking at one exam version to the other says, it's pretty much the same stuff. Other people like me who get into the details say it's very different. So I guess it depends on who you ask. But fortunately, they provide exam objectives for all the exam versions, and you're welcome to look at the previous exam version and the current exam version, put them side by side, and see exactly what the differences are. You will be able to do that. I said you will have until July 31st to take the Security Plus 601. The 601 exam retires on July 31st. The 701 was released recently, I think November, right? Was it before that? They're all blending together at this point, but the 701 is going to be around for another 3 years, so you're fine. You're good. You're good. There's plenty of time for you folks that are working on the Security Plus. Today is all about Network Plus, the 008. Of course, there's a new version of Security Plus coming soon. We'll talk about that, what the differences might look like. So we'll worry about that one. We'll figure out the details of what we want to do. All right, we've got a lot to go through. We start at the top of the hour. This is the pre-show. I'm checking. Am I recording yet? I'm not even recording yet on my side. See that? This is why we have a pre-show. Click and click. You know what I haven't done is the audio for, you now get to see stuff that we just never do. I usually do this before we go live. I'm James Messer, and you're listening to the Professor Messer N10-008 Network Plus Study Group. This study group was recorded on May 15th, 2024. If you'd like to watch a video replay, visit my website at professormesser.com. I'm James Messer, and you're listening to the Professor Messer N10-008 Network Plus Study Group Aftershow. This Aftershow was recorded on May 15th, 2024. If you'd like to watch a video replay, visit my website at professormesser.com. Yeah, I put the script up every time. Every single, because I get it wrong. If I don't, that's how that works. The worst part, though, is when you create the script and you put something in there that's not supposed to be in there, but you just say it without thinking, and it ends up in the final version. And it's wrong. You have to go back and fix everything. I know. Where is the music? There's no music. Suddenly, we've now messed up the whole system. Like there's no music. It's not blending in. It's not transitioning it. Nope. It's all done. It's all done in post, as they say. It's all done in post. Why is your JavaScript not working? Well, that's a really good question, which is why I don't do application development right there. That's a super big reason why. That's why we deal with any of that. And thankfully in IT, we don't tend to deal a lot with application development. We do some scripting, but very rarely in JavaScript. Very rarely are we doing JavaScript in our IT scripting. We're usually doing something like PowerShell or Python or even just batch files or shell scripts, but not really web browser programming scripting thing. That's it. That's definitely something I prefer. I prefer doing that. Oh, we need to show the results. Where's everybody checking in from? There we go. You guys can't even see that where you are, can you? Let's see if I can put me up on the big screen. I need a macro. We'll change this. We'll move that around. This is where people are checking in from. Lots of folks in North America. There's Europe checking in. We always have someone in the middle of the Atlantic, as well it should be. I wish there was a boat. We could just put a boat out there and you could be on the boat. It would be great. You're off the coast of Brazil. How nice. So you got a few things to work on there. Cedric in the chat room passed my Network Plus last night. Congratulations. If there was no other reason for you to be here, that's the reason right there, is to tell all of that great news to all of us. Congratulations, Cedric, on your new Network Plus certification. I need some noise that I can hit the button. I need to hit the button and make a noise. Or now that I'm thinking through it, maybe not. Maybe we don't need a button to make noise with. Oh, that's the problem. Is you always have that first idea. Let's do that. Then you're thinking, after the third or fourth one of those, we might not want to do that. We might just want to stick with congratulations and keep it moving with all of those. But congratulations. The correct answer there, regardless of where there are noises or not, is us congratulating you. So well done. That's always good to have in your pocket, isn't it? Like, changes your whole outlook on life. It changes your week, changes the way you see the world. The sky is just a little bit bluer. The grass is a little bit greener. The air is sweeter. And then of course, we decide, let's do another one. And then everything comes back down to do that again. Then we go through the process again. That's sort of the process, isn't it? We just keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it. And we keep going through the process because you have to, because everything keeps moving. We're got about 2 minutes until we get started. Looks like the rain is starting soon. That's always good. We're going to put the phone away. I don't want to hear about the rain. It's a little rainy outside today. It's a little stormy. So trying not to get caught in the rain. Trying not to get my cake wet. This is one of those where today we've got all new questions, but hopefully it'll be something. I try to put some twists in some of these questions, and then I take the twist out. It's hard to figure out just how difficult to make it for our study groups. But I'm trying to get it as close as possible to the topics or ideas or concepts that you would run into on the actual exam. But this is a study session. This is a session where we're trying to focus on what we need to know to pass the exam, but not necessarily the exact duplicate of style. Although in many cases it does turn out to be a very good, reasonable facsimile. So we're now less than a minute away. I should check now that we are recording. Things look good here online. We've got things at the top, all of the cameras, except for that one. Get up and running, and boom, there's that one. That looks good. I think we're in really good shape. I think that would absolutely be the case. Wish these study sessions were on Friday. Well, we used to do them on Saturdays because I used to do these. I had a full-time job, and I would do these on the weekend. So I'd always do them on a Saturday. But of course, there would always be a group of people that would say, well, I can't do that on a Saturday. It really needs to be on a Wednesday or a Friday. So I can never be perfect. It's never going to be exact. It's never going to make everyone happy. But I get as close as I can. We get replays done. We get everything recorded. We get all of that ready to go, and I think we're in good shape. All right, we got this ready to go. It's top of the hour. We've got cameras ready to go. I think it's time to start a live stream. What do you think? Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the May 2024 Professor Messer N10-008 Network Plus Study Group. This is the study group where I ask you questions that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. Where else would they come from? Of course, they're coming from the exam objectives, and hopefully you'll be able to join us live and step through these questions. I'll show you in a moment how you can join us, and it's something where in this first hour, I will ask you those questions, and then in the second hour, we open up the chat for questions. In fact, you can submit your question at any time by following the directions that we have set up for our study group. Those directions can be found right here. Pop open a new browser window and head over to professormesser.com/QA. That's what you are looking for. And if you do that, there will be a question waiting for you. We call it our rewind question because it is a question that we have done in a previous study group. This is your only gimme for a study group to be able to work through this. And this question this month asks, which of the following would be the best way to manage multicast flooding? Would that be full duplex, asymmetric routing, static routing, IGMP snooping, or default gateway? Now, the standing rule in our chat room is to not answer the question in the chat room. Instead, we want to answer the question by visiting the URL that's on your screen. Please go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer to this question. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. And we will come back to this question in just a moment. We do one of these study groups every month, and this month, our Network Plus study group is covering the N10-008 version of the exam. If you would like to follow us when we are not here live, we would love it if you could subscribe to our ever-growing, ever-popular YouTube channel. Follow it at professormesser.com/YouTube. Subscribing to that would be a tremendous help to us. We would hope you would consider that. Also, we have weekly pop quiz questions for Network Plus and for Security Plus, and we have daily pop quiz questions for A+. You can find those posted on our Twitter account, or I guess the service formerly known as Twitter account, and then there is an Instagram account, which currently we are still calling Instagram. I don't know what we'll call it eventually. It'll be Y or Z. I guess we just increment them, right? Is that how it works now? I'm pretty sure. That's how we're going to do all of the new services. We'll start counting the letters as if we are the 802.3 committee, and we'll just keep incrementing those numbers all the way up. It's a great way to find us. You can also find us on Discord at professormesser.com/Discord. The questions we're going to talk about today come from the current version and only currently available version of the Network Plus exam, and it is a version called the N10-008. You've probably already heard me say that already today. This was released on September the 15th of 2021, and its retirement will be December the 20th of this year, which means if you are here in May, you still have plenty of time to study your N10-008 exam objectives, pass this exam, and earn your Network Plus certification. We're not even close yet. The single exam that you will be taking is 90 minutes long, and it could have a maximum of 90 questions. You might get fewer than 90 questions on your exam. The score that you're looking to get, it's an odd score because it's on a scale from 100 to 900, and the score you need to make is a 720. So the real key to this exam is not to overthink the scoring system, because ultimately we have no idea how CompTIA scores these exams, and they aren't interested in telling us. So all we can really do is wait until we're done and see, does the final score show a 720? And if it does, we're in good shape. Most of the exam is multiple choice-based questions, but there are a few performance-based questions on the exam. We'll talk more about those differences in just a bit. There is a new version of Network Plus that is going to be released soon. In fact, it is scheduled for release, not just scheduled, it will be releasing on June the 20th of 2024. Well, this is May, so that means next month is going to be a brand new exam version. Now, if you look around the internet, there's not a lot of N10-009 study materials out. So although the test will be available, it still takes a number of months for people like me to create new content and be able to make those things happen. So hopefully you will be familiar with where you might want to go to resolve or to look through what may be the latest version of study materials for you. You certainly want to be sure there are study materials before you start studying for that specific exam version. Everything else about the exam, though, identical. So you've got a 90-minute exam, maximum of 90 questions. The score stays the same. The format of the exam is the same. And indeed, a great deal of the exam objectives are extremely similar as well. So you will find that there will be a lot of similarities between them, but there are some significant differences. And when that exam is released, we'll talk more about those differences. Check in next month, and we'll have a little bit more detail for you on all of those. I've done all the research. I've documented everything. I've counted all the differences down to the very detailed level. We will have plenty to tell you about with that exam version. Don't forget, though, if you're going to be working on your Network Plus, we have plenty of study materials available on our website. Our entire Network Plus course is free. The new N10-009 Network Plus course will be posted soon, and it will also be free. It's sort of the staple that we use here, is that we always have a free course. Every minute of every video of the course is available for you to watch for free online. You don't have to pay anything. There's nothing behind a paywall. There's nothing extra you have to submit. You don't even have to register anything. You just show up online, go to YouTube, and everything is there. What could be easier than that? Well, of course, we also have course notes. We have downloadable versions of these videos. We have downloadable audio. We have other content that might help you with your exams. And you can, of course, find out about all of those at professormesser.com/netsuccess. We have replays of this live stream available immediately afterwards on YouTube. I also upload an audio-only version in a podcast format. You can use your favorite podcast listening program to be able to listen to those podcast episodes. And you can find those at professormesser.com/podcast. You can also head over to your favorite streaming service. If you're on, for example, Spotify, simply search for Professor Messer, and you will find this podcast is already on Spotify. Very easy. If you already have the account and already set up, you can favorite that podcast, and it will be already available to you to be able to watch and listen to all of that content. About a day after we are done with this live event, if you look at the YouTube video description, you'll notice, almost like magic, suddenly timestamps appear. Well, it's sort of magical. The magic is brought to you by my marketing manager, Lori. Hey, Lori. She's listening to this and going through the entire set of what we are talking about here and manually putting these timestamps in. It's really the only way to do it, the best way to do it, the most accurate way to do it. And we can go back years with these YouTube video descriptions to find exactly what you are looking for. So hopefully you're familiar with the YouTube and what we have there. If not, remember, it's over at professormesser.com/YouTube. And thank you, Lori, for doing that. In the chat room, if you are working through that, as we've said in the chat room, as Onion has said, thank you, Larry. And then he said, Lori. It was just a typo. But now Lori has a new name. We also have, when we're not here on our live stream, we have our chat available. Join us on Discord at professormesser.com/Discord. We have an amazing community there of people that are studying for their A+, their Network Plus, their Security Plus. And of course, we have the usual wiseacres that hang out there as well with me and talk about all kinds of different technology topics and other things. You can join us and see what's going on the community at professormesser.com/Discord. Eventually, you will need to take your exam. And if you are in the US or Canada, you are welcome to look at our website and save just a little bit of money. So you could certainly go out to the CompTIA website and pay full price for your exam. Or if you would like a built-in discount on our website, you don't need a discount code. You don't need a coupon code. You don't need an extension in your browser. Simply visit professormesser.com/vouchers, find the voucher that you would like to use, and we will walk you through the process of saving money today instead of buying that voucher at full price. And also, if you do go to that site, you get a little free extra that you can't get anywhere else. It's my Exam Hacks ebook. I wrote this ebook to put all of the tips and tricks that I have accumulated through the years studying for my industry certification exams. This focuses on the CompTIA exams, but a lot of these tips apply if you are doing other Microsoft, other Cisco, you're doing VMware, you're doing Red Hat, you're going through all these different exam types. A lot of these tips will apply to all of those as well. Just a little something extra if you were nice enough to come to our site to buy your voucher. I'd like to give you a little something extra too. That is at professormesser.com/vouchers. Let's now look at that question we asked earlier. The question is, which of the following would be the best way to manage multicast flooding? Would that be full duplex, asymmetric routing, static routing, IGMP snooping, or default gateway? If you think you know the answer and you've locked it in, you got a second or two to get it in before that closes. Let's close this out and see how you did with this question. 51% of you say the answer is IGMP snooping. 20% say it's asymmetric routing. 16% say it's full duplex. And then we're down to single digits. We have 7% that say static routing and 3% that say default gateway. So multicast flooding is certainly a concern. If you're someone who has multicast running in your environment, you're probably already familiar with this. In fact, I would imagine a number of you are. This is used for video feeds, audio feeds, specialized applications, and other things where you want to optimize the bandwidth usage so that only the people that need to view or hear those topics are the ones that receive that traffic. We can send that single frame out with that packet, and inside of that packet, it is only received by the people that need to gather or view that information. We count on our switches to be able to do this, but occasionally you'll have a situation where the switch is set up just to send multicast to every port on the switch, and that's not very efficient. So what we want to do is to have a different way to manage our multicast traffic. And one of the ways to do that is through a process called IGMP snooping. The IGMP stands for Internet Group Management Protocol, and it's a very, very common way for switches to wait until someone subscribes to that multicast to be able to send that traffic down to the user, therefore saving us a little bit more time and efficiency on our network and leaving bandwidth available for other applications. IGMP snooping is probably a feature that's in your switch configuration. This is a switch configuration that's a graphical config, and you can see there's an IGMP snooping status, and you can enable or disable that status right there by simply clicking a checkbox and saving your configuration, and now you're doing IGMP snooping on that switch. That is the right answer, IGMP snooping. So for those of you, the 51.9% of you, I'm not sure who the 0.9 is, but whoever that is, has now selected the correct answer, IGMP snooping. Now, it would not be asymmetric routing. Asymmetric routing is when traffic leaves the network going one direction through one router and then comes back through a completely different path. That is not very common, but it's something you do occasionally will find on a network, and it can create problems with switch configurations, firewall rules, and other access control lists. So something to always keep in mind, but it doesn't have anything to do with managing multicast flooding. Full duplex is a good way to optimize the communication from a device to a switch, but it really doesn't have anything to do with multicast. Full duplex isn't going to help you very much there. Static routing is simply a way to tell a router manually where the next hop might be to get to a destination. Again, nothing related to multicast. And then lastly, a default gateway simply defines what router I should be communicating to communicate outside of my local IP subnet. And that has nothing to do with multicast either. The correct answer here, and the one that 51% of you got right, is IGMP snooping. You were exactly correct on that one. Congratulations and well done. Hopefully that's given you an idea of the type of questions that you can run into, because that is obviously a multiple choice based question, and a great deal of the questions on your exam are multiple choice based questions. But not all questions on your exam are multiple choice. In fact, the first handful of questions you get on your exam will not be multiple choice. So what will they be if they're not multiple choice? And the answer is they could be anything but. They could be a fill-in-the-blank question. They could put you at a command prompt and ask you to perform a particular task. They might give you something where you're dragging and dropping things around the screen. Maybe you're putting things in a particular order. Maybe you're matching and doing a matching question. There's so many different ways to present this information, and it's really not about the way the question is asked, because if you know the material, if you study the exam objectives, and you're familiar with all of this content, it really doesn't matter how they ask the question. You will get this the question right because you'll know all of the answers on this one. So I have for you today a performance-based question. This is a matching question, and our performance-based question of the month asks this. It says, match the command tool to the function. That's what that says. It's kind of hard to see there because my head is in the way there. Match the command tool to the function. We have 4 different functions. They are determine if a device is connected to the network, find the subnet mask of a database server, list the IP address for www.professormesser.com, and confirm encrypted data is transmitted in a VPN tunnel. We have also, of those 4 different functions, I've listed out 7 different commands. So there will be some commands left over. Those commands are dig, arp, show config, netstat, TCP dump, ping, and ipconfig. So quite a few to go through. Now, if you think you know the answer, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Instead, you want to use the link that is on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. If you think they're already in order, all you really have to submit is 1A, 2B, 3C, and 4D. That's it. Now, obviously, it matches up a little bit different than that. I made it a little bit harder than 1A, 2B, 3C, 4D. So hopefully you'll figure that out. But that also means that 3 will be left over. And if you want a little bit of extra credit, you can tell me one of the 3 that are left over, what do those provide? What do those utilities give you? Because all of these utilities are listed in your exam objectives. You should know all of them, but I'm only asking you for 4 of them. Let's see how you do with this. You can lock in your answer. Go to professormesser.com/QA. Tell me what you think the answers are for this one. Matching questions are very common to see on the exam. Fortunately for what we're doing today, this can give you a little bit of a flavor, and I've kind of customized it to give you the same feel of an actual exam, because this is a very common method that they use, is they will give you 4 of one thing and 7 of another, for example, which means that you could get all of these answers wrong because it isn't a one-to-one relationship. It's not like you can know 3 of them, and then if you didn't know the 4th one, well, there's only one answer left. It's got to be that 4th one. But that's not how this one's set up. We have 4 different functions and 7 different commands. So even if we get 3 of them right, we will still have 4 different answers to choose from. So that becomes a little bit more challenging, doesn't it? And so that's why it's structured that way on the screen, so we can go through and understand what those happen to be. Now, if you think you know the answer, submit your question by visiting the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA. A number of you are starting to put your answers in. Remember, you don't have to type in the whole thing. Just 1A, 2B, 3C, 4D. That's all you have to put in. And you do have to remember what your answers were, because I don't show you those once you submit them. I don't think that's the way it works anymore. I think we've got a good choice of different options here. Hopefully you're familiar with these, and we'll have to step through and see how you did with all of them. In fact, let's start that process by starting with the very first one on our list, which is determine if a device is connected to the network. This is probably one of the first things we do when we're troubleshooting a system. We sit down and we want to know, is it communicating on the network? If it is communicating, what is it communicating with? Am I able to talk to other devices on my local subnet? Am I able to talk to my remote devices that are outside of my subnet? There's lots of different things we might be able to use. In this particular case, with the 7 options that we had, ping is a perfect example of what we might use. The ping command. The ping command is one that allows us to check to see if a system is responding to any type of queries on the network by sending a simple ping request and expecting to get a ping reply. Now, many of the devices on your network will be filtered and will not respond to a ping. This is a security technique and certainly an important one, but there are other devices on your network that are set up to respond to pings, and default gateways are very common examples, especially internally. So we can do that testing that we need to do to be able to know, is this device really communicating out to my default gateway? Is it communicating outside of my default gateway? Is it communicating to the internet? It's one of those different ways to do it. So determining if a device is connected to the network would be a ping. Next on the list is find the subnet mask of a database server. And one good way to find a subnet mask of any device, because as you're probably aware, if you start working on all of these different devices and trying to figure out what their IP address, their subnet mask, the default gateway, subnet masks aren't often sent across the network. So it's almost impossible to tell what a subnet mask is if all you're looking at is traffic or looking at information from some other part of the network. So in this particular case, your best choice would be to run a command locally on that device that will tell you everything about the IP configuration, and it is ipconfig. That's certainly the answer that correlates best with the 7 options that we had. If you're on a Windows machine, you want to look at the IP configuration. That's the command you want to use, and it will tell you your IP address, your subnet mask, your default gateway, your DNS configuration, much more information by using the ipconfig command. Next on our list is list the IP addresses for www.professormesser.com. Notice list the IP address for this. I actually have multiple IP addresses on mine, but one of the great ways to do that is to look at the DNS configuration to know what is the IP address associated with that fully qualified domain name of www.professormesser.com. And the best way to do that would be to run some type of tool that can query a domain name server. NSLOOKUP is a good example of a utility that's able to do that, but the dig command is also a great utility that provides us with a way to query a DNS server and see what that DNS server thinks the answer is. It's a great utility to use when troubleshooting because, after all, every problem is a DNS problem, isn't it? So this is a very good utility to become very familiar with. You might do a pretty good job with troubleshooting once you become a dig and NSLOOKUP expert. And then lastly on our list, we want to confirm that encrypted data is transmitted in a VPN tunnel. Just because we've created a VPN tunnel doesn't necessarily mean that we've configured it to encrypt the data. It may only be doing digital signatures, for example, checking the integrity of the data rather than providing confidentiality. So confirming that, one great way to confirm it, obviously we could look through the configuration of the VPN to see if we've set it up to send encrypted data. But if you really wanted to confirm this, we want to look at the packets. And one of the best ways to grab information from the network and look at the packets is to use a utility like TCP dump. Which is exactly what TCP dump was designed to do, is grab information from the network and display what was inside of all of those frames that we're sending across. Hopefully that can help you as you're working through and understanding what those are. This might be also a very good way to just become more familiar with the OSI model, with trying to understand more about what is really being transmitted on the network, how many broadcasts, how many multicasts, how much web traffic, how much voice over IP, what type of response times are we getting. Effectively, when you start gathering packets from the network, you have an insight into what's really going on that is very different than what any other tool can provide, which is why if you call tech support about a problem with performance, they will almost always ask you, oh, do you have a packet capture? Because we could look through that, tell you exactly what's causing the delays. That's a very good example of how knowing where the right tool might be can really assist with the troubleshooting process. That means there were 3 utilities, 3 different commands here that we did not cover. So one of those on the list was ARP, the other is showconfig, and the last one is netstat. So the real question is, what do those do? We talked about extra credit. Now it's time for some extra credit. What is that ARP command? What is that really telling us? The Address Resolution Protocol is what ARP stands for, and allows us on our local device, there's an ARP command that correlates back to that ARP protocol, because the ARP protocol is responsible for matching together IP addresses and MAC addresses. Because obviously we know a lot of IP addresses we're communicating with, but on our local network, our switches need to know MAC addresses. So this brings these 2 worlds together. And if you wanted to identify the MAC addresses of your network devices and view those, you can simply look at your ARP cache on your local machine. That is the ARP command that allows you to do that. So that was a very good example of what we could use to define the ARP command. We also have the showconfig That is a command. It's not in Windows. It would really be in a third-party device. We often see the show utility or show function available on switches, on routers, on firewalls across many different manufacturers. I think if you're ever in the case where you're trying to figure out where is a configuration stored, what is inside of that configuration, what are the settings in this configuration, it's useful if you know the correct command to display that config. And on many switches, routers, firewalls, and other devices, you can use show config to do that and view, for example, STP settings on a switch. That's a good example of something you might want to look at, or anything that might be in the configuration of that device. And then lastly, netstat. Netstat is a command that's very useful for understanding what type of inbound and outbound communication might be going to and from a device. And a good way to do that is to use the netstat command. So if you're trying to determine what devices are communicating to my local web server, what IP addresses are originating this traffic, how much traffic is being sent inbound to this web server, netstat will tell you all of those things. So those were the answers we were looking for. Determining if a device is connected to the network is the ping command. Finding a subnet mask of a database server is the ipconfig command. List the IP address for www.professormesser.com. Dig will do that for you very easily. And then confirming encrypted data is transmitted in a VPN tunnel is TCP dump. Hopefully you are familiar with those commands and the different options that were available. There are many other commands that you should be aware of for your exam. Make sure that you step through and become familiar with all of them, because you could be asked about anything on your exam, not just the 7 different commands that we have here. A good thing to do, and if you're at all familiar with the exam objectives, make sure you go to those objectives to learn more about what you should be learning as far as these commands are concerned. Let's do another question. We're back to multiple choice-based question. This question asks, a recent audit has identified accounts using the following passwords: Ninja, Football, Dragon, and QWERTY. Which of the following would describe the process of identifying these accounts? Would it be weak encryption, session hijack, evil twin, dictionary attack, or max spoofing? Now, if you know the answer, use the link on your screen at professormesser.com to lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We want to go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in what you think the right answer might be for this particular question. That's at professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. In fact, you might have gone through a lab, or you might have seen a story of someone doing this. There's certainly a lot of very good security type events that have occurred most recently that have taken advantage of some of these techniques. I don't want to give too much away yet. So lock in your account. A lot of people have already locked theirs in, so I'm wondering if we might know the answer to this one. This question again asks, a recent audit has identified accounts using the following passwords: Ninja, Football, Dragon, and QWERTY. Which of the following would describe the process of identifying these accounts? Would that be weak encryption, session hijack, evil twin, dictionary attack, or max spoofing? Well, according to you, 93% of you say the answer is dictionary attack, which means that everything else is single digits. 4% for weak encryption, 0% for session hijack, 0% for evil twin, 0% for max spoofing. It's really just it's between 0 and 1%. We're rounding down to 0 for this one, but the vast majority of you say the answer is dictionary attack. But is it really? Well, in this case, you have to really go with the massive majority there. The dictionary attack is indeed because the passwords that were found were very easy to understand passwords. Things like football and dragon. In fact, you didn't even have to go too far to be able to do that. This is a very good example of where, if you are ever in the situation where you want to be able to find a password, simply look at the top 10 passwords that people use, and you will see in that list Ninja, Football, Dragon, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's things you would obviously know that this is what people are using. You don't have to go too far into the dictionary to be able to know that that was indeed the answer. And of course, many of you knew that that was absolutely the case as well, because 93% of you chose dictionary attack, and you were correct. That is exactly the answer we were looking for here. And hopefully that is something that you are already familiar with and you can work through the details of. Well, let's do another question. Maybe we can get a question for you that's a little bit more challenging. Let's try this one that asks, a laptop is able to ping other devices on the same subnet, but cannot ping outside of the local network. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this issue? Would that be DNS not resolving, incorrect IP class, invalid subnet mask, duplex mismatch, or incorrect SSID? It's got to be one of those, right? Those are the options available. A laptop is able to ping other devices on the same subnet, but cannot ping outside of the local network. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this issue? Is it DNS not resolving, incorrect IP class, invalid subnet mask, duplex mismatch, or incorrect SSID? If you think you know the answer, follow the links on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. A lot of people jumping on this one. I'm wondering if we really know what the answer is. I think in this case, there could be multiple answers in here, but I suspect what we'll really run into here is one that is really the most likely reason for this issue, because after all, that was the question, is we weren't really concerned about what it could be. We really want to know what it most likely is, which are two different things. And that's really something you'll run into on the exam quite a bit, is that multiple answers could technically be correct, but only one is going to be a very obvious most likely reason. So good example of things you might find on your actual exam. Let's see how you did. A question again asks, a laptop is able to ping other devices on the same subnet, but cannot ping outside of the local network. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this issue? Is it DNS not resolving, incorrect IP class, invalid subnet mask, duplex mismatch, or incorrect SSID? What did you choose? Let's find out what you think the answer is. 52% of you say DNS is not resolving. I think you may have heard me even say it's always DNS, right? So that would have to be the answer. Although 36% of you say an invalid subnet mask. We also have incorrect IP class at 6%. 2% say duplex mismatch, and 2% say incorrect SSID. So that was our problem, is that we're able to ping devices on the same subnet, but cannot ping outside of the local network. What is the issue associated with that? Well, to know that answer, we're going to need to understand how to troubleshoot configurations of IP address settings on our local devices. Whenever you sit down a device that's not able to send or receive information on the network, we want to be able to check the local configuration. What is my IP address? What is my subnet mask? What is my default gateway? What are any of these settings happen to be? And once we do that, we can perhaps even monitor traffic that's on our local network. What information is being sent on our local network? What IP addresses do we see of other devices that are on our local IP subnet? That will help us understand a little better if we have the correct IP configurations on our local machine. This obviously won't tell you subnet masks, but it will help you understand if you have the right IP addressing scheme configured to your device. And if you're not sure, maybe you can find a device that's right next to you that's on the same network, and it will certainly have the correct subnet mask and perhaps even the correct default gateway, which will really help you during the troubleshooting process. And as we mentioned before, you always need to do some pings, need to ping around to see exactly what's going on. In fact, that's what this question is about, is pinging through these different parts of the network. Now, of course, as you've looked at this question, a lot of people have even mentioned in the chat room, what I thought it wasn't one of the answers. And in fact, that's pretty common on the exam, is that there will be a question and it will say, what's causing this issue? And on a network, there could be a million different things causing this issue, seemingly a million. but certainly a large number of things that could be causing the problem. But the answer is going to narrow this down very specifically. Now, if we can ping on our local network, then whether we are pinging using a information from a DNS server or from an IP address, we know that it's not going to be the DNS not resolving information because we've already used that DNS to resolve that for devices on our local network. That there's a difference between a DNS not resolving and a DNS resolving or providing us with wrong information. So in this case, we know the DNS is working because we may have used it already, or we may be pinging via IP address, in which case the DNS is not even involved. So I'm going to count out DNS not resolving as being the main or primary reason that we might run into this issue. We have other folks that said incorrect IP class. Well, we don't use classes with IP any longer to determine what subnet masks happen to be. So that would not be an answer in this decade or the previous decade. This would be going back quite a ways to be able to use IP classes. As we've mentioned many times in our Network Plus course, we don't do IP classes any longer. Duplex mismatch is something we should absolutely avoid on our networks because it will cause the local device to have very poor performance across the network, especially when transferring large amounts of data. But we could still transfer the data. It's just a little bit slower. Our question was we were not able to even send a ping and receive a ping response to any device that's outside of our local network. Therefore, it's not going to be an issue relating to a duplex mismatch. The ping will still work even if the duplex is mismatched from your machine to the switch you happen to be plugged into. And an incorrect SSID means that we are on the wrong wireless network. There may be multiple wireless networks where you happen to be, but I would bet that regardless of what wireless network you're on, you're probably able to communicate outside of that wireless network. So in this particular case, a problem communicating to a different subnet is not going to be because we chose the guest network rather than the production network. So incorrect SSID, although the SSID we're connecting to might not have a default gateway, it may not be connected to an external subnet. That's pretty unusual, isn't it? And certainly given all of the other options, not the most likely reason. In this case, I'm going to go with the most likely reason being an invalid subnet mask. Subnet masks help you determine what subnet, what local IP subnet you happen to be connected to. And if you have configured an incorrect subnet mask on a device and you try to ping it outside of what you believe is your local subnet, your computer, looking at your subnet, believes that the subnet mask believes this is not outside of my network, and it's not going to send it to my default gateway, and I will never get a response from that particular IP address. In this case, if you want to find the most likely reason that something is not able to communicate, given these 5 different options, the one that I'm going to go with is the one that 36% of you said is invalid subnet mask, and that is indeed the correct answer. That's the one we were looking for. DNS not resolving, there's nothing about this question that leads us to believe that DNS is the issue. Certainly IP classes we don't use. Duplex mismatches and incorrect SSIDs would not cause this type of problem. The only thing that's left at that point is indeed the invalid subnet mask, and that was the answer that we were looking for. Hopefully, if you want to try this, try changing the subnet mask on your local machine, and let's see how you do with this one. I think that might give you an idea of where you can go to figure out those details. Now, if we start looking at all of the different things you need to know on this exam, you'll notice that we've already covered subnet masks and gateways and command lines and dealing with different aspects of network performance. There's so much to know that is in the Network Plus exam. And of course, all of my local videos that I've created, all of the training videos for the Network Plus that I posted on YouTube, the entire course covers every topic from the exam objectives. In fact, if you look, it's 93 videos. There's over 14 hours of content for the N10-008 exam. So when you run into that scenario, you might be thinking, I got a lot I need to start reading and start watching and start listening to. But not everybody's able to go through all 93 videos or go through 14 hours of that content. So what I've done is take all of this content and I put it into a single document. These are my course notes. The course notes are designed to give you an understanding of what you need to memorize and understand for this exam. This is the digital version of my course notes, and you can see it has all of the text, all of the important graphics, all of the charts, all of the tables. Everything that's in my videos is also in these course notes, and that's by design. So if you are trying to determine where can I get a summary of everything rolled up into one easy to read guide, it's my course notes. That's what these are designed to do. If you'd like to know more about those, you can check my website. Go to professormesser.com/NPCN for Network Plus course notes. And hopefully that can help you with your studies. We have both digital versions of this available. We also have physical versions. I don't have my physical course notes here at the desk, but it's one where if you get the physical printed version, I'm obviously going to ship that to you. But while you are waiting on that shipment, you get immediate access to the digital version for free. There's no additional charge for that. So you can download the digital version while you're waiting on that physical book to be delivered. This is a very good example of using this technology and taking this and putting it everywhere you can. So no matter whether you're on your mobile device, you're on your local computer at home, you're on a computer at work, you will always have access to this very important data. Find out more on our website. Go to professormesser.com/NPCN for Network Plus course notes. Let's do another question. A lot of you wanted an OSI question, so here you go. The question asks, a firewall administrator has configured a rule with an incorrect UDP port number. I guess I was the one working on the firewall that day. The question is, which OSI layer is associated with this issue? Would it be layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, layer 4, or layer 7? We have those 5 choices to choose from. If you think you know the answer, no answers in the chat room, please. You want to go to the link that is on your screen, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. See how that goes. This is one of these that if you understand working with the OSI model, you should be locked right in on what this is. But if you don't, this will be a very good chance to understand where these different areas of delineation might be. So have a look at this one. This is a very practical example of OSI. We use OSI all the time when we're on networks and we're trying to explain to people what we're seeing, what we're troubleshooting, where we believe the problem is. So it's very common for people to say, I think it's a layer 1 problem. I think it's a layer 7 problem. I think it's a layer 3 problem. And they'll work through the different layers. And when you say that to someone, especially another networking person, they know what you mean. Immediately when you say that, they know exactly what part of the communications process you believe the issue happens to be related to. So it's a very common way to broadly describe the way the network operates in a way that other people can also follow along with you. Very, very common. OSI is something that we use constantly in our industry, sometimes multiple times a day. I'll be describing something and talk about how that fits into the OSI model. Very often when somebody says, we think the problem is your network. Oh, it's not layer 3, your problem is layer 7. You know, you can have that conversation as well, because it probably is layer 7. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asks, a firewall administrator has configured a rule with an incorrect UDP port number. Which OSI layer is associated with this issue? Is it layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, layer 4, or layer 7? What did you answer? We have 68% of you, a very strong majority, say the answer is layer 4. 21% of you say the answer is layer 3. That's almost everything that we're dealing with when we start looking at these particular answers, because we have single digits for layer 2 at 7.3%. Layer 7 has 2%, and layer 1 less than 1%. So we've got some different options here when we're working through these problems as to what this would be. If we go with the majority here, layer 4 is what many of you have chosen. And if you start looking into UDP and TCP and the way it operates, then you're probably very familiar with this particular OSI layer. If you very broadly wanted to put these things in context, MAC addresses would be in layer 2, IP addresses would be in layer 3, and anything dealing with TCP or UDP would be in layer 4. So that's a really good example of where these different technologies live, where they operate, where when there's a problem, where we would reference those, and anything dealing with, oh, you got a TCP port number incorrect. Oh, you've got a UDP port number you configured in the firewall, but the port number was wrong. We have an OSI layer 4 problem. And that's a very good example of when you talk to the firewall person and you say, we got a layer 4 issue. It's a bad port number. And they go, oh, you're right. Okay, we need to fix that. It's a UDP problem. I'll get that covered. And they can make that change immediately when you're working through those. This is probably, if you're ever in the case of having to understand the OSI model, people sometimes get a little thrown over the model because it's not a thing. It's not real. It's simply a way to describe a very broad set of processes. And in fact, if you go, there was a conversation happening on our Discord just this past week where people were having arguments over the OSI model, which I will tell you is a pointless task because it is such a broad model that you could probably make an argument of most things being in one layer or another. And both of you would, in many ways, would probably be pretty accurate, be pretty close to the truth, even those. In fact, sometimes people will describe a process as being at OSI layer 3.5, OSI layer 2.5. Well, the OSI layer doesn't exactly work that way, but it certainly speaks to some of the complexities with trying to create a very specific answer from something that is a very broad and generalized model. Don't ever find yourself falling into that trap, or it's a relatively worthless process to go through. So in this case, layer 4 is indeed what we were looking for. Anything dealing with TCP port numbers or UDP port numbers fit very solidly into the OSI model at layer 4. And if you chose that, indeed 68% of you chose that, you got that one absolutely correct. And we've got time for more questions, and I think we should do one. Next on our list is this question that asks, a network administrator is configuring 802.1q. Which of the following would be most associated with this configuration? Would it be switch-to-switch trunking, network access control, quality of service, wireless authentication, or spanning tree protocol? If you know the answer, follow the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Instead, go to the link that is on your screen to answer this question. The question again asks, a network administrator is configuring 802.1q. Which of the following would be most associated with this configuration? Would it be switch-to-switch trunking, network access control, quality of service, wireless authentication, or spanning tree protocol? Lock in your answer. A lot of people locking them in quick on this one. I'm wondering if we know which one this one happens to be. We'll have to see if we really know what this one is. There's so many standardized terms, standards for configurations, standards for anything from the IEEE. There's the 802 committee is very, very busy at setting standards for our local area networks. And so you do have to know what the main ones happen to be. I think that's probably the best part of this is really understanding the important ones, because there are hundreds, probably thousands of standard names that the 802 committee has come up with at this point. But really you only need to know a handful of these, especially for normal purposes and for the exam also. There's very few 802 different standards we need to keep our eye on. Let's see if you know what the standard happens to be. This question asks, a network administrator is configuring 802.1q. Which of the following would be most associated with this configuration? Is it switch-to-switch trunking, network access control, quality of service, wireless authentication, or spanning tree protocol? And what did you choose? Didn't get a majority on this one. In fact, we have one big number and then kind of a four-way tie for second place. In first place with 43% of the answers, switch-to-switch trunking has the answer. We have 15% that say quality of service, 15% that say wireless authentication, 14% that say network access control, and then 10% say spanning tree protocol. None of the answers are single digit. All of the answers are double digits, which is why we probably want to drill down into this one and learn more about 802.1q. In the industry, whenever we're talking about this particular standard, we often abbreviate it in our conversation as the .1q config. That way we don't have to go through 802.1q. .1q is a little easier, rolls a little more off the tongue to be able to understand what this answer is. .1q specifically is referring to trunking. Trunking is when we have what would be a normal Ethernet frame going through the network. There it is. It's got a preamble and a start frame delimiter and a destination and source MAC address, type of frame field, the payload that's inside of it, and the frame check sequence at the end. Well, one of the things that happens when you start sending information between switches is you would like to send information from one VLAN on one switch to another VLAN on another switch. Well, do you see any VLAN fields in here? I didn't see one either. So what we did is we decided to make a new kind of frame with a new field in it, and it has a VLAN field. There it is. We just stuck it in the middle. But you can't just stick things in the middle of a frame. Ethernet doesn't like that very much. Your switches certainly don't like that. Devices are confused when you start adding things into the mix that no one is expecting. So when we add that VLAN field into the Ethernet frame, we tell our system we would like this to be a special kind of frame. This is an 802.1q frame that we are doing. That VLAN ID is an important one in this configuration, so we can add the VLAN number into this mix, and we can put it in the switch so that the switch knows when it receives it that is expecting to see that VLAN field. The way this would look functionally is very similar to this. You can see there is a VLAN 100 in red and a VLAN 200 in blue on one switch. There's also a VLAN 100 and 200 on another switch. But how do you connect these devices together even though they are on completely different physically separated switches? Well, we add that .1q trunk where we start sending both VLAN 100 and VLAN 200 over the exact same physical connection. We're just adding that extra field into the Ethernet header so that we're able to send and receive the proper information on that link. And whenever you send information from VLAN 100 across the network, it will end up almost magically into VLAN 100 on the other network. So if you're configuring VLANs and you're trying to figure out what is the best way to configure this, .1q works every time to be able to make that happen. In fact, if you were able to look at the physical switches, they would look something like this, where you have some devices configured as VLAN 100, other devices are plugged into interfaces configured for VLAN 200, and maybe a third for VLAN 300. And then you can trunk all of that between the two switches with that configuration. Anytime you see .1q, you are trunking. You're sending those multiple VLANs across between different switches. And indeed, that was the first answer on our list, and that was the answer that 43% of you chose, was switch-to-switch trunking. You got that one absolutely correct. Network access control is a technology where people are required to authenticate before gaining access to the network. It's a very useful and very important security protocol. Normally, we would refer to that as 802.1x. So that is the difference between the .1q and the .1x for the network access control. So you have to make sure you know your X's and your Q's. Notice they are uppercase to designate that they are major standards and not just an add-on to something that they have created previously. They are their own standalone standardization. We've also got other options here. None of these IEEE standards are associated with quality of service. 802.1q is not associated with wireless authentication, which is sort of the network access control answer as well. Both of those I would really put into the category of 802.1x. And then we also have spanning tree protocol, also not the 802.1x or Q standard. Separate standard on its own. Spanning tree protocol is not associated with .1q. In this case, you hear .1q, you should always be thinking trunking. You should always be thinking switch-to-switch communication and sending information between multiple VLANs. Those are the right answers, and that's why 43% of you got that answer absolutely correct. If you're watching this video for continuing education unit credit, I would love to send you an email that certifies that you were here for a 1-hour webinar. This is something that CompTIA requires you to submit if you are submitting CEUs as the process of renewing your certification. Not everybody's using CEUs for renewal, so this would not apply to you if you don't have a certification or you're not planning to use CEUs. But for the rest of you, if you'd like to collect another CEU, this is your chance to do it. The way you would do that is go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click the Contact Us link, and in that Contact Us form, put your name, your email address. In the subject line, please put May 2024 Network Plus. And in the body of the message, on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month, switch to switch trunking. Our super secret code words of the month are switch to switch trunking. Again, if you would like to receive that message from me, that email, go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. Click on Contact Us, put in your name, your email address, the subject line, put May 2024 Network Plus, and in the body of the message, put the super secret code of switch to switch trunking. I also read through all of these, so if you want to put other things into that message after that empty line, we would love for you to add that to the list. I usually go through these about every week, usually on the weekend. Sometimes it takes me a little bit longer, sometimes a little bit faster with them, so please be patient. But this was something that might help you if you are accumulating these CEUs, continuing education unit credits for your renewal. This would not work for future certifications. You must already be certified to be able to gather CEUs. You can't collect CEUs until you finally have a certification, and they do check for that. So just so you're aware, you will have to wait until you are certified to finally submit and earn these types of renewals. And unfortunately, you can't just watch replays of this to be able to earn your renewal. There's other things you have to do as well. CompTIA's, they're already on to us on that one. I would love for it if you just watch 25 or 30 of these. That's fine with me, but they just don't allow it. Darn it. That's the challenge, isn't it? Well, we've got more time on our list. Even though we're top of the hour, I think we should do another question. This one's more of a troubleshooting question. And next on our list is this one that asks, an interface on a switch is showing a large number of late collisions. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this issue? Would it be encrypted VPN tunnel, packet drops, high utilization, duplex mismatch, or jumbo frames? Got a few to choose from there. If you think you know the answer, there's your link. Go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. The question again asks, an interface on a switch is showing a large number of late collisions. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this issue? Would it be encrypted VPN tunnel, packet drops, high utilization, duplex mismatch, or jumbo frames? If you think you know the answer, follow the link on your screen and submit what you think the answer might be. That's exactly where you would go. Yes, we did just talk about the CEU codes. You'll have to wait until the video is over and figure out when that is actually done to be able to submit those. And when I give you the structure and the things you have to do to submit your CEU, that's part of the CEU submission process. So if you don't follow the instructions that I gave, and there's people that will just send me a random email that is outside the scope of the process we talked about earlier, that doesn't work. You have to follow the instructions because that lets me know that you listened or at least tried to listen to all of this. It's difficult, I know, to go through the process, but it's by doing that, I know you were at least here and listening to that part of what we were doing there. Just another part of the overall process of confirmation. Another thing that CompTIA does look for when they start looking over and looking at what you have submitted to be able to work through these. A lot of people already answered this one. Let's see how you did with this question. It asked, an interface on a switch is showing a large number of late collisions. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this issue? Is it a encrypted VPN tunnel, packet drops, high utilization, duplex mismatch, or jumbo frames? All real things, but which one could it be? 56% of you think the answer is duplex mismatch. 18% say high utilization is what's causing this issue. 13% say jumbo frames. 10% say packet drops. We almost had another 5 answers with double digits, but nope, encrypted VPN tunnel got none of the answers. Well, 1.55% of the answers here. So our problem here, late collisions. This is sort of an odd problem, isn't it? If you've ever run into problems with collisions these days, there should be very obvious reasons why that is occurring. If we rewind the clock back before there were these very large switches, these multi-port switches that we created, when we created those, we were suddenly able to connect devices directly to a switch. It was not a shared medium. And at that point, we effectively turned on full duplex and we no longer had collisions. It was one of these situations where we went from a configuration of networking where collisions was an important statistic to keep your eye on, and especially where the collision was occurring within the frame was also an important thing to keep your eye on. But these days, if we get a collision of any kind, you have to certainly look at your configuration and wonder what is going on, because the normal set of collisions we get on modern networks should be a donut. It should be zero. It should be nada. So if we end up getting some type of collision counter that is incrementing on our network, there's probably something that is not set up correctly. You think it's duplex mismatch. This is something that we can monitor on the interfaces of the switch and monitor on the interfaces of our systems. There are times, for example, you might look at your switch and an interface is resetting on the switch. Sometimes because of high utilizations and a large number of buffers that are being used on that particular interface. But that wasn't the problem we were looking for. We were looking for the problem of late collisions. A late collision is one that occurs after 64 bytes of that frame have gone through, really more like 56, depending on how you're counting. But it's one that is occurring later in the frame than what you would normally expect. Collisions should be occurring in a very tight time frame because the network should be designed so that when the collision occurs, that immediately that device can tell everyone on the network that there was a collision. Everybody can stop and restart the process. With anything that is going through the process of trying to understand the details of networking, you understand that collisions can certainly be an issue. And if you happen to have a problem with the configuration of duplex on your network, you will almost certainly run into a scenario where that is causing late collisions for you. It's causing an issue with communicating across the network, especially if you configure half duplex on one side and full duplex on the other. There will be collisions because one device is thinking that it's in half duplex mode and needs to send these notices and collisions out. But in full duplex, information can just flow. So you'll very commonly get traffic already flowing. One device will send traffic out on the network and it will collide unexpectedly. And then you've got this very late collision that has occurred into the frame itself, which should be, as I mentioned, should be a warning to you that something is not quite right with your configuration in that scenario. In this particular case, that is exactly the situation that we've run into. 56% of you say, yep, we've run into that before. We've got a duplex mismatch on the network. And given all of these other options, it should have kind of led you to that answer. This is one of those where knowing what the answer is not can effectively tell you what the answer is. So let's step through what the answer is not and see if we know what that is. 18% of you said high utilization. As I've already mentioned, on our modern networks where everything is connected at full duplex, you're not going to have problems with any type of collision counters because there are no collisions. I know if you go to a third-party certification exams, you'll often see them wanting to count collision domains. It's a relatively antiquated thing to have to learn these days, but it does teach you about the fundamentals of Ethernet nonetheless. But now that we've gone to fully switched networks, there should be zero collisions of any kind on the network at any time. So having high utilization simply creates a lot of traffic. And if anything is occurring because of high utilization, it's drops and buffer overflows inside of our switch interfaces, but it would not be causing collisions, much less late collisions, which are their own flavor of collision. It's certainly something that points out a specific kind of problem. So it would not be high utilization. Utilization doesn't cause collisions on our modern networks. On jumbo frames are frames where we can set a larger maximum transmission unit than 1,500 bytes. We can go up above 9,000 bytes on a single frame if our switch supports this. Not just our switch, but every device that is communicating using jumbo frames needs to support that functionality. So if you wanted to be able to send very large file transfers, your device has to support jumbo frames. The switch you're connecting to has to support jumbo frames. All of the devices in between you and the network access for the storage drive has to support jumbo frames. And then your NAS or device that has the storage also has to support jumbo frames. All of that through the entire set of things. So this is one where jumbo frames incredibly useful, especially if you're transferring large amounts of traffic. It does it much more efficiently than those smaller 1,500 byte frames. But again, it's not causing late collisions. Again, there should be no collisions because we don't do collisions these days, regardless of how big the frame happens to be, even if it's jumbo. Hey, we got to change the name, right? We can't see jumbo anymore, can we? I never know. I'm trying to keep up. You'll tell me. I know I'm waiting for your emails. Next on our list, packet drops. 10% of you say packet drops is the answer that we should be looking for. But packet drops would certainly cause problems in communicating because if traffic's coming through and for whatever reason the packet gets dropped, maybe we filled up buffers on a switch, the traffic was in some way corrupted when it went through a bad interface and was ultimately dropped by our system when it was received. These packet drops themselves can be problematic and cause communications issues, but dropping a packet doesn't cause a collision. If anything, it's the alternates, the antithesis of a drop would be a collision. I guess if you want to look at it that way. The packet drops are when we're simply removing the packet from the network. So there's nothing to collide with if we happen to do that. Another one of those examples where getting rid of that as a possible answer might lead to what the actual answer might be. And then lastly, encrypted VPN tunnel. Only 1.5% of you chose that particular option. Encrypted VPN tunnels are normal. That's what you want from a VPN tunnel. And VPN tunnels by themselves don't show or cause late collisions. That's not what we were looking for. Again, if you knew what the answers were not, then ultimately you knew what the answer was. And indeed, 56% of you say the answer is duplex mismatch. That is what I would choose as well. Well, I know we're past the top of the hour, but let's do another question, shall we? We'll do one more. Kind of fit this next one in. This might be a gimme or it might not. We're going to find out how much we know about this topic right now. This question asks, which of the following would you be most likely to find on a SIM? Would it be a list of firewall security policies, disk space usage for internal database servers, real-time CPU utilization for all cloud servers, a configuration backup of all routers and switches, or a summary of login failures for all devices? Oh, there's a lot to go through there and parse out. If you think you know the answer, there's your link on the screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. Let's see if you know what the answer is. We'll go through these options again. The question asks, which of the following would you be most likely to find on a SIM? A list of all firewall security policies, disk space usage for internal database servers, real-time CPU utilization for all cloud servers, a configuration backup of all routers and switches, or a summary of login failures for all devices. I think this is one of these answers also where it could be more than one thing, but that wasn't the question. The question is what you would be most likely to find on a SIM. See if you know the answer. Lock in your answer by visiting professormesser.com/QA, and you can absolutely tell me what you think the answer is. Folks in the chat room are reminding me, and thank you for doing so, that if you like this video, it would be tremendous if you could give it a thumbs up. That does help us quite a bit. And if you would really like to help us on our goal of hitting 1 million YouTube subscribers. You can go to our YouTube channel and subscribe. Go to professormesser.com/YouTube or youtube.com/professormesser. It works both ways. And you can subscribe to our channel. We just hit the 900,000 subscriber mark. I don't get it either, but you're so awesome and you keep subscribing, and thank you so much. That would be amazing if you could be a part of the growth that we have had here. Thank you so much also for your continued support in working through all of these. So nice to have that functionality on our YouTube and be able to see that. I think it speaks more to the things you have done with this series of courses than anything that we have done. So it's a nice validation. We don't often look for numbers or work towards numbers. We use that more of, we must be doing something right. And so you're telling us through those numbers what we're doing is something that's useful to you. So we're very, very grateful. Let's see how you did with this question. The question asks, which of the following would you be most likely to find on a SIM? Is it a list of all firewall security policies, disk space usage for internal database servers, real-time CPU utilization for all cloud servers, a configuration backup of all routers and switches, or a summary of login failures for all devices? Here's the crazy part, is that I think all of these could be found on a SIM. I think in some degree, we'll talk about that, but 67% of you say the answer is a summary of login failures for all devices. We have 17% that say the answer is a list of all firewall security policies. And then we're into single digits, with 7% saying a configuration backup of all routers and switches, 5% say a real-time CPU utilization for all cloud servers, and 2% say disk space usage for internal database servers. Well, we should probably start with, what am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about a SIM. A SIM is an SIEM. Stands for Security Information and Event Management. It is very often a server that contains a very large number of log files from a number of different assorted, diverse, and other devices on our network. So anything that we are working through where we're trying to understand is a log file from, we need to gather a log file from a switch. We need to gather a log file from a database server, from a router, from a firewall, from an intrusion prevention device, from a different kind of device. All of those log files from all of those very different systems, and every single log file has a different format and a different set of data that it's collecting, but it doesn't matter, because when that information is sent inbound to the SIM, it stores everything, whether that is an alert that was made from a security device, whether it's an aggregate of every log file that is collected throughout the day. Maybe there are log files that we're using from many different brands of switches, many different brands of routers, many different brands of firewalls. It doesn't matter. The SIM is smart enough to parse these log files out, know where these log files are coming from, and put them in the correct format for us to be able to view them. What's nice is once you have all of this data in one place, now we can start sifting through the data to find information. Sometimes we can correlate together information from many different devices. Maybe we're looking at a very specific statistic from a specific set of devices. Maybe we need to look back in time to see if we can find when a particular vulnerability was exploited. This information may be contained within certain log files. Well, instead of going to individual servers and looking at all of the individual log files on the individual servers, I can go to one place. I simply go to the SIM, and it shows me everything I need to know. For example, you might be feeding into the SIM all of the log files from every domain controller in your Windows network. This is the device that manages the authentication process when someone logs in. So you can get a list of all of the authentications that were successful. I can get a list of how many of the authentications were not successful, which sometimes is even more interesting. This is a good example of this. This is from an actual SIM. This is from Splunk. Splunk is a real SIM. No, it is. No, honest. Splunk is a SIM, and you can see there is this SIM. Splunk is incredibly capable. It is able to take information that we have created. I have a set of events that I've built into here with a filter, and I've told the SIM, list through everything that's on this device and show me all of the authentication logs and summarize for me how many of these authentications have not been successful. And it creates for me a little chart of time. I can click the chart and it will show me even raw data. This one's from the Microsoft Authentication Package version 1.0. You can see the name of the server is ecommerce03, and there was a login failure, an unknown username or bad password, the username Hacksaw. Aha, we're on the Acme Tech network, and indeed Hacksaw was not able to log in. That sounds like it could possibly not be a legitimate user too. I don't know if you're with me on that one, but that's certainly a good example of how having this information contained in one single place and being able to summarize everything in the SIM makes this a relatively simple process where you can ask one query and get a summary of everything that's occurring on your network over time. These are very valuable tools. They're also tools that take a bit to get configured. It's not a simple plug and play in many cases, but once you get your SIM configured, get all the data inbound, and you get someone who's very good at creating these reports, it would be a very, very valuable tool for the network team, the security team, and really almost anybody in IT. And that's why a summary of login failures across all your devices at 67%, yep, you were absolutely correct. That is what I would consider to be the most likely of these 5 to be found on a security information and event manager. But as I said earlier, all of these things could possibly be found in a SIM. One of the advantages of a SIM is that it will take many different kinds of data coming in and it'll store the data. And there are ways that you could set up a firewall to send packet captures to a SIM. You could set up a third-party device like a firewall to send firewall security policies to the device. You could take configuration files and send backups to your SIM. But that's not really what a SIM is for. The SIM is for collecting this log file information, examining the log files in the fashion that we just saw, maybe summarizing across multiple devices or listing or filtering out information across multiple devices. That's what you would do with a SIM. You really would not use it for listing your security policies. You have a separate firewall management system for that. Keeping a configuration backup of routers and switches, you probably have a separate backup process for that. You wouldn't really store backups in a SIM. You need to store backups in a place where those backups can be protected and can be themselves backed up for future use. We also have real-time CPU utilization for all cloud servers. Although that's an interesting statistic and one that might be very useful to you, you really don't usually find real-time statistics on a SIM. It takes time to take the log file, transfer the log file, parse the log file, and finally view that information on the SIM. It's anything. There's many things about the SIM that are valuable, but real-time is not something I would commonly associate with a SIM. And then lastly, disk space usage for internal database servers. That is another case where the SIM is not designed to give you an overall health dashboard of all of your systems. It's there to show and parse out log file information, and your disk space usage is not often contained within a log file. I guess the only time you might see it is if your storage space gets very highly utilized. An alert might go into a log file. That log file might be sent to a SIM, and you could tell the SIM, show me all the instances of very high use of disk space utilization, for example. But this would not be a summary of usage. There's probably a separate dashboard that's in your data center. It's in your help desk that shows all of the servers. It shows what their current disk space is and what CPU utilization is. There are separate monitoring systems, primarily based around SNMP and other methods that would show you those details, but not the best place for a SIM. So although all of these could be in a SIM, the one that would be most likely by far is the one that 67% of you chose, a summary of login failures for all devices. That is the answer we were looking for, and that is the one that best describes the capability of the SIM function itself. Hopefully you are familiar with those. All the questions that we've done today and all of these topics come directly from a list that CompTIA gives you for free. Everything you need to know. And many people will come to our Discord, for example, and they'll ask, how do I know when I'm ready to take this exam? How do I know when I really know everything I need to know? Well, you go to the objectives because this is your checklist. This tells you everything you need to know to be able to pass your exam. It is available on the CompTIA website. Make sure you go there to download the latest version of that. It is at professormesser.com/objectives. And it's another one where if you're trying to figure out, is this topic on the exam? Is it not on the exam? This is the document that will tell you. Everything you need to know are there from the exam objectives. We do one of these study groups every month. Our next Network Plus study group is going to be in June the 12th. I've changed the dates just a little bit from last week. I tell you very often that these dates can sometimes change quite a bit depending on the chaos that is my world. And in this case, I know I had previously scheduled the Security Plus study group in June for June 19th, and now is configured, set up for June 20th. Sort of the way that my schedule goes these days. But come back on our Network Plus. June 12th is the next Network Plus. We also have a Security Plus study group a week from today. So we still aren't done with May. We still have things happening in May right now. So feel free to stop back in a week. We'll do another set of these brand new questions, but all about the latest Security Plus exam. We'd love to have you back here for that. Well, we're not done yet, although I've finished asking you questions. Now's the part of the study group where you ask me questions. So if you have a question about certifications, technology, or what's going on in my world, I'll consider answering those in the after show. Stick around for that. Don't forget about our success bundle. Go to professormesser.com/netsuccess. Also, don't forget about the discounted vouchers. You could pay full price on the CompTIA website, but why would you do that when there are discounted vouchers for anyone in the U.S. or Canada or U.S. territories? You can go to professormesser.com/vouchers. And don't forget, we're all over the internet. You can find us on our Discord at professormesser.com/discord, on YouTube, on Twitter, on Instagram. You just type in professormesser.com/ the name of the place you would like to find me, and you will probably find everything at that particular link. Well, if you enjoyed this video, we would love it if you would give it a thumbs up. We'd love it even more if you considered subscribing to our channel. It's another way that you could support the website and what we're doing here without really having to spend any money at all. And who can beat that? Stick around for the after show. We have a lot more to come. Thanks for joining us in this first hour, and we will see you next time on the Network Plus Study Group. All right. We'll take a sip. We will get things started in the after show. And in fact, in the after show, I need to hide this so that you can see that we'll be taking questions. Those questions are not on that page. These questions are on this page. You can submit those questions for the study group at any time during the live event. You don't have to wait until now for next time, something to remember. But you can, of course, submit them now, and I will be monitoring and looking through these questions and trying to see what questions you have about IT, about technology, about career, about anything relating to the topics we are considering and talking about today. Simply visit the link on your screen, go to professormesser.com/QA, and you could submit that from the tab that is at the top of the page. Let's go with the question that many of you are asking. We'll start with the one that tends to pop up whenever there is a change to a version. As I mentioned, a new version of the Network Plus exam will be releasing next month, even though the current version of the exam will still be available until December. So there's an overlap period that we're about to start next month, just over a month from now. So when we start looking at what's there, the question here is, so I'm looking for Network Plus, but do I want to wait until this new version comes out? Should I not wait on it? You've been asking in the chat room. Do we really, should I wait on this? Should I not wait on this? What are we doing? And this is a perfectly reasonable question to ask when a new version of the exam comes out. But I will give you the advice that I give almost every time to everyone whenever one of these transitions occurs. Keep in mind the current version of the Network Plus exam, the N10-008, is currently the only version available. So you don't have a choice into what version of the Network Plus exam you will be taking if you are starting your studies today. And if you are working towards your Network Plus, there's no reason you shouldn't start your studies right now. That version, the N10-008 exam, will continue to be available until December the 20th. So technically, as we sit here in May, nothing changes with the current version of the exam until December. And considering that it takes most people about 2 or 3 months to study for their Network Plus, you have plenty of time to study for this exam and earn your Network Plus certification before December the 20th. Also, as I mentioned, keep in mind, there is no N10-009 until June the 20th. So we have to wait more than a month from today to even have the ability to take that new version of the exam. But even then, has anybody seen any N10-009 books? I haven't. Have you seen any video training courses? Nope. Have you seen anything relating to N10-009 out in the world? No, you have not. And that's for a number of different reasons. It takes time to create these new courses. It takes time to have all of them posted online. And one of the things that I think is important to keep in mind is that even when June 20th hits and the N10-009 exam is available for you to take, now we have to study. We still have to sit down and spend 2 to 3 months studying that N10-009 content. Except, will there be any content? It takes time to get these things published. You may not find there are many books available on June the 20th. You may not find there's many video courses available on June the 20th. You may not find the things that you're accustomed to finding when it comes to your training process. So I tell people all the time, don't ever wait to get certified. Never wait to get certified, because there will be people right now that are working on their N10-008 exam. They'll be ready to take their exam in a month or two. They'll earn their Network Plus certification, and now they're certified and you are not. That's the problem, is that you don't want to be standing there trying to get a job or get a better job. And when they ask you, oh, do you have your Network Plus certification? No, I'm just waiting. Not doing anything. I'm just waiting. Well, why are you waiting? Why don't you take the N10-008? I don't know. Just waiting. The other people that are also applying for this job that have their Network Plus certification would like to extend their thanks, because you've now given them an advantage that you effectively voluntarily gave up. Not studying for your certification can be a significant issue if you are actively looking for that job or that better job. So this is a good example of why I tell people, don't wait. Why would you wait to earn something so valuable? You need to earn that now. And since you have all the chance to earn that by December, definitely right now, if you're starting today, go study the N10-008. Incredibly important. Now, other folks will say, no, but wait, if I get an N10-009 certification, it's a newer certification and it's better and it's shinier. So it's got to be better because it's newer, right? Here's the problem. If you take the N10-008 exam and you pass it, you earn the security or the Network Plus certification. You are Network Plus certified. If you take the 009 exam and you pass it, you're also Network Plus certified. It's exactly the same. You earn literally the same cert. There is no such thing as an N10-008 cert or an N10-009 cert. Those version numbers describe the list of questions you get. They have nothing to do with the certification. The thing that you earn once you pass the exam is the Network Plus certification. And so that doesn't have a version number. It's not better or worse than any other one. In fact, I'll tell you that if somebody 10 years ago earned their Network Plus cert, and every 3 years they have been renewing their certification up until today, they are just as Network Plus certified as somebody who passes their N10-008 exam today. They are exactly the same certified individual. So I tell people, never wait. There's no advantage to waiting. You're earning exactly the same certification when you're done with this. The only time where it's really useful to look at that date is as we get closer to the retirement. Let's say it's November. We're getting ready for Thanksgiving here in the United States, and we're trying to maybe think about getting a Network Plus cert. And we look at the calendar, we see the N10-008 retires in December that gives us less than a month to pass the exam during the holidays. Well, in that particular case, you probably do want to take the 009, but you don't have to wait because the 009 has been out since June. So that overlap period is very useful. It's very valuable to people who are working on their cert because it gives you the chance to choose the right certification for what you're trying to do at that particular time. And it also doesn't require you to wait around and wait for another certification to come along that's better, because there is nothing better. It is only the same. So that's why I tell people you should absolutely right now work on the N10-008. If you're starting your studies today, go get a book and videos and watch everything associated with the N10-008. Some of you, if you started today, there will be a percentage of you that becomes certified before the new exam is even available. I know you people, some of you rip through these things in about a month and you've got it and you're done and you passed your test already. Well, right now, we are more than a month away of that new exam becoming available. So there will be a percentage of people that start their studies today who will already be certified well before the exam even appears. So another example of how important it is to know those things. So never wait, never look for sometime in the future and give yourself an excuse to delay the process. It's so much more important if you put that certification in your pocket right now. Very important to be able to do that. Let's do another question that are coming through. Other questions that are on the list. So this is a pretty good, well, let's even talk about this one because this is a somewhat of a controversial question. James has introduced this controversy to all of us and says, I have my Network Plus exam tomorrow, remote proctor. So you're taking an exam at home, you're taking an exam as this remote exam process. And as many of you know, you can either go to a testing center where they have a room set up just for taking tests, or you can take your test at home. You can do it remotely so that you don't have to go to a third party. So I think this is a really good example of there's decisions that need to be made about where you take the exam. The question from James asks, apart from looking after myself, okay, any last minute tips? This part about knowing what to expect is an important one with these remote exams. The remote exam itself has a lot of rules associated with it. Think about it. You go to a testing center. It is a known quantity. It is a room that the testing center has set up. They know it is a secure room. They know there's nothing in the room that could be used for any unethical or cheating. So there are lots of things that, as you are going to a testing center, that you don't have to worry about because a lot of the security is already built into the system. The problem, though, is when you're at home, if you look around your house is not even close to being a secure testing environment. It is far from being a secure testing environment. And because of that, there are a lot of rules you must comply with when you are setting up the testing area, things you can do and not do during the exam itself that tend to be a lot more, people consider it to be more strict or more controlled than a testing center because I guess in many ways it has to be. For example, you have to always have a camera on you when you're taking a remote exam, and there has to be a microphone so they can hear what's going on in your immediate area. That's not something you often think about in a testing center, although I will tell you they have a camera watching you in the testing center, and that camera is also listening to you in the testing center as well. So a lot of the rules are the same, but they are implemented differently when you are sitting at home. And that's why I highly recommend you go out to the list of requirements if you're planning to take a remote exam at home and you read through every single one of those, because a lot of people don't realize you can't have people walking through the room, walking behind you on their way to somewhere else in the house. You can't do that. You can't have anybody in the room with you because they might be looking at your screen and making notes. You can't have multiple monitors on your desk. You have to unplug them or remove them. You can't have headphones Another example, because those headphones could be used to record information about the exam itself. People could be telling you things in the headphones. So there's an aspect of ethics and cheating and worries about that they have to consider. So I would highly, highly recommend reading through every single one of those. I would also recommend going to the subreddit, the CompTIA subreddit, which is at reddit.com/r/CompTIA. That subreddit has a lot of people that take remote exams, and they talk about their experience during the remote exam. For example, people will often say, I didn't know, during my exam, I did this. Probably done this during an exam. Oh, you can submit questions at the second hour of the study group at any time. We'll be moderating questions. You're talking to yourself, your hands over your mouth. These things, by the way, are not allowed in the testing center. I don't think a lot of people realize that. You can't talk in the testing center. There's other people taking their exam in there, but you absolutely can't talk at home, and you absolutely can't hide your mouth, because you might be saying the exam and recording it somewhere, and there might be a reason to prevent that from happening. Now, if any of these things happen, what if you drop something on the floor and you go out of the range of the camera? They will stop the exam. They will cancel your exam. And whatever your score is at that time, that's your score. If you only got to the first question and answered it, you just failed. And if you want to take the exam again, you have to buy another voucher. So you've lost the cost of that exam because you weren't following the rules on that one. This is something that catches people all the time. There was just someone posted on the CompTIA subreddit today that they took the exam and had to get up just as the exam was starting to open a door, and they canceled the person's exam. Nope, it's over. You just left the screen. What were you doing? Were you reading a book? Were you looking for the answer? There are very good reasons to prevent these things from happening, but you'll be out the money, and nobody wants that either. The proctors on those home-based exams are relatively strict with those rules. They have been given specific guidelines that say, if you walk outside this, if somebody walks through this, if you hear loud noises, if these things are happening, they can stop the exam at any time for any reason because of that. And they are recording the video. They have records of this they can go back and look at. Sometimes they can help along those lines. Sometimes those videos can hurt you. So it's not a guarantee if they have to go back and have a look at those and what would be there. If I was taking an exam right now, I would go to a testing center. I don't want to have to deal with that extra level of management at my workstation. Not to mention, do you imagine taking a test here? I mean, I can't take a test at this desk. I'm going to have to find somewhere else to take the exam on a different computer, doing a different thing. So that's a really good example of why it'd be useful to know those rules, because if you know the rules, you're not surprised when something comes up about putting your hand in front of your mouth. You'll remember you can't talk during the exam. So there's a lot of things that will help you if you get to that point. And I think that's another thing that will help anyone who's working towards this exam to be more comfortable during the exam, because you know the rules already. Nothing's going to surprise you. And if they suddenly pop up on the screen a little message that says you must stay in the camera, please, or stop talking to yourself, you're like, oh, that's right, I can't talk. Sorry, got it, thanks. And you're not thrown by that. You can just keep going with your exam. So another good example. There have been people that have taken many exams online, many remote exams, and not had any problems whatsoever. There have been people that have taken remote exams that have had significant problems. That's why I prefer going to a testing center. However, if my testing center was, I guess in my local area, there's probably 5 or 6 testing centers I can go to. But what if you're in an area where your closest testing center is an hour away? Well, of course you're going to take your exam at home. That saves a lot of time. So just make sure you read through what the requirements are. That's going to be incredibly important when you're choosing where to take your exam and what you will be expecting when that exam is going through. So let's do another question from this list. There was a question in the chat room that says, am I going to be uploading content for the new Network Plus? It's not about to be released. It's released next month. But yes, there will be an N10-009 course as well. Yes, absolutely. We will have videos for all of those. Not a huge number of differences between the two exams, but a significant amount. And certainly every time there is a new version of the exam, I create a brand new course because there are changes. There's nuance and difference that becomes important when you start looking at these different versions of the exams. So another good example. And I will certainly have the N10-009 exam as well. Other questions from the list, and of course you can submit your question at any time by going to professormester.com/QA. One of the questions that came in is, when does the N10-008 exam retire? The last day you can take an N10-008 exam is December the 20th of this year. December the 20th is the retirement date of the N10-008. The retirement date of the N10-009 will be 3 years from now. 3.5, really. So plenty of time. December 3 years from now will probably be the retirement of the N10-009. So that's when you start getting closer to the retirement date during this overlap period, that's when it becomes important to choose the right one. But you got plenty of time to worry about that as we go through this. Other questions. We'll keep going through the list of questions. In fact, folks even asked in the list, how long does it take for me to come out with new content when the new exam comes out? Well, you'll already see some of this content already available on day one. So we wait until that exam is available and we begin releasing those videos to the internet. So it's pretty quick. I want you to have access to the study materials the day the exam is available, and we will have that available on that day. So there's obviously a lot of work going on behind the scenes right now to create the latest set of Network Plus questions, answers, content, videos, course notes, the whole thing. It's all in there, and we have to work to get all of these done. So yeah, it's kind of busy. There's a lot going on to make that happen. Other questions. Let's keep going through the list and having it here. And along the same lines as we asked the question about waiting for an exam, this question asks, I'm waiting for the new CompTIA Network Plus exam because I want to compare the two objectives before making my choice. You don't think it's a good idea? I don't. First, as I mentioned, never wait for an exam. Never, never, never. The other thing that's important to keep in mind is the exam objectives for the N10-009 were released about 3 months ago. So today, as we are sitting here, you can go look at the N10-009 exam objectives. You can compare those to the N10-008 objectives. I have obviously already done this, and they're pretty much the same content with some changes in a bit of scope between both of them. But many of the things that are on the N10-008 also appear on the N10-009. I'm going to give you a little bit of insight into this. This is something that I try to create for each course so that you can see what the differences are between all of these. So I have a comparison that I create that is a it's a detailed description of what's new and what's changed, but it doesn't have a lot of specifics in it. It's really getting down to individual objectives on the exam. And as many of you know, we've already looked at, I'll show you before we go into this list. Let's look at the objectives. These are the objectives for the N10-008 exam. So for example, section 1 is compare and contrast the open systems interconnection, OSI, model layers, and encapsulation concepts. So you have to know OSI layers, layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, all the way to layer 7. You have to know that data encapsulation and decapsulation within the OSI model context includes the Ethernet header, IP header, TCP and UDP headers, TCP flags, payload, and maximum transmission unit. So that's on the N10-008 exam. Let's look at the N10-009 exam objectives. We'll look at the latest set, which I think is version 4. So here's the 009 objectives. Kind of looks similar. Here's section 1. Explain concepts related to the Open Systems Interconnection, OSI, reference model, layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, layer 4, 5, 6, and 7. Now, wait a second. Where's all the other stuff? We look at 008. There's a whole data encapsulation and decapsulation as it applies to the OSI model. There's information about Ethernet headers and IP headers and TCP headers and UDP headers and TCP flags and payload and maximum transmission unit, and none of that's in the 009. So there are some cases where there's content that's no longer in the exam. There are also cases where there is information that has been added to the exam. For example, there's a section on the 009 that talks about infrastructure as code, which is not currently in the 008. So just because they remove something from one section, you may be thinking, oh, it's going to be an easier exam. Oh, but wait, they've added other things that we've never seen before in the Network Plus. If you were to take everything in the N10-008 exam objectives and you were to compare them to the N10-009 exam objectives on a objective by objective basis, and you were to have a detailed count of what has been added and a detailed count of what has been removed, you would have this. There it is. This is the list in a kind of a broad Venn diagram of the N10-008 exam, which is the circle on the left, and the N10-009 exam, which is the circle on the right. Now you can see already that the N10-008, if you by number of objectives, is larger than the 009. Visually, you can really see the difference. The actual statistics are somewhere around 590 objectives for the 008, 430 objectives for the 009, which means the 009 contains 27% fewer objectives than the 008. It's about a quarter smaller by number of objectives. So that may or may not correlate back to a larger or smaller exam study group process. The books may be the same length. The videos may be the same length, or they might be 25% smaller. I guess it will depend. Once we start looking at the details and making all of the videos, we'll be able to see that later. But you can already see there's a difference in total number of objectives. If we start looking at what has been added and what has been removed, we can see that of the 590 objectives in the 008, 300 of those objectives do not appear in the 009. Like 50% of the 008 was thrown out, and they added in 140 new objectives to the 009. So a third of the 009 exam you've never seen before. It's not part of your 008 book. It's not in my 008 video course. These are all new topics, which is good. You know, they're always updating and keeping things fresh and making sure you have the latest set of things. I will also say, and what this doesn't show, is why is there this difference? Why is the 008 larger? Why is the 009 a little bit smaller? Why are there this large number of objectives that have been added? 33%, a third is brand new. Why is that different? And it's really because of your feedback, I think. This is pure speculation in my mind. I have no insight into CompTIA's process, and they don't explain any of these things to me anyway. But I really feel like when we look at the 008 exam, a lot of people get worried about memorizing things. Man, there's a lot of port numbers. There's a lot of things we have to know about cloud. There's a lot of things we have to know about this. And we have to know about all these standards. And we have to break down. And so there is a lot you have to memorize. And CompTIA recognizes, I think, that memorization is important. There are things you really do need to know that require rote memorization. Port numbers, for example, are pretty important. You need to know those. But there's also a number of things that aren't necessary that you know every nuance, every bit of data for. So I think a lot of this is them changing a number of the objectives to be more global in scope rather than specific in scope. So a lot of these existing shared objectives, I think, are where those are coming from. I believe if you look at these two together, and boy, I have, you'll know that most of the content between these two is remarkably similar. The only difference is I think they've really changed the scope of what we need to know. So although 33% of the objectives are new, they aren't wildly outside the realm of what we're already comfortable with on the N10-008. And I would highly recommend you look through both of those exam objectives, which is what I did, and make your own counts and have a look at what you think the differences are. This is a very good way to get a better understanding of what's there. Now, ultimately, you might want to look through objectives that I think, in fact, I have some listed just so you get a feel for how I go through the process. I go through and map everything out. Let's see if I can show this reasonably on the screen. This is what I do. I go through every single objective on the N10-009. I put in a spreadsheet. I mark whether that objective appeared in the 008 or not. And then as I go through, I mark these off so I know I'm covering exactly what CompTIA wants to know. The other thing I do is I have a look at previous versions of the exam, like the N10-008, and I compare that to the N10-007 and the N10-009. 007, obviously, I compared 3 years ago. 009 is what I compared recently. And you can see whether topics are existing or were dropped from there. And if they were on the existing or dropped, I keep a count of those so that I can, that's effectively where that Venn diagram came from, is by evaluating all of those numbers. I know. This is what I do, though. This is how I work. That's sort of the process we go through, and being able to make all of those happen. So for those of you that are working on your 008, keep working on those. Although it looked like that was so much bigger, it really isn't. It's remarkable how many of these things are sort of combined together. And they just sort of threw out a little bit as they went through the entire exam. Also, if you bought a voucher for Network Plus, that voucher is good for any version of the Network Plus exam as long as the voucher is still valid, as long as it has not expired. Most vouchers are good for a year. You'll need to look at your voucher to see when the expiration date is. But if you go to the CompTIA website, and don't be thrown by this, let's go out to the store.comptia.org and let's have a look at the CompTIA store. Here we are. And there's a section at the top for certification vouchers. Let's go look at these. In fact, let's just look at Network Plus, since that's what we're looking at today. There are two vouchers here. It's kind of funny how they're doing this these days. The Network Plus voucher specifically says the N10-008, has it written on the voucher itself. And if you buy that, its retail price in the United States is $369. This voucher, though, is also good for any Network Plus exam. So if you wanted to wait until June 20th and on June 20th, take your N10-009 exam, this voucher will work for that N10-009 exam. I know it doesn't say that. I know it says 008. So you're already thinking, no, this is only for the 008. Not true. It will work also for the 009. It's also remarkable, by the way, and I don't know why CompTIA is doing this right now. The cost of the Network Plus voucher and the cost of the Network Plus voucher retake, it's effectively twice the amount. That's not a retake. That's just another voucher. Why would you even take this? Why would you buy this? Why wouldn't you just buy two of a regular voucher? That's what you're going to do. In fact, why would you buy the retake? Just buy one at a time. If it was the A+, I guess it would be different, where you have to take two exams. Why would you even do that when it's the same as going back and just buying another voucher again? So I'm not sure what they're doing with their pricing on their website lately, but they did that at the beginning of the year. Just kind of how that worked out. Interesting, though, when they work through those. That's why I tell people, don't worry about the voucher you bought. If you have a Network Plus voucher, you can apply it towards any exam. It does not have to be the Network Plus exam today. You can wait 6 months and apply it to the N10-009. Certainly reasonable, and something you should even have in the back of your pocket. Maybe there will be a number of people start studying for the N10-008 today, and then something will happen with life and they get pulled away from it. And then 3 months from now, they show back up and they go, okay, let's work with Network Plus again. But now you're 3 months down the line and you're thinking, I'm worried about the December retirement date. Let me use the right words. I'm worried about that December retirement date. Let me now work on the N10-009 and I can use my same voucher to pay for that. That's what we should do, is kind of work along those lines and being familiar with this. Let's take a question from the chat room from Jordan, who asks, hey, Professor Messer, I'm a week out from taking the N10-008 Network Plus? What would be the one thing you'd suggest studying more than others at this last minute? First, thank you for asking this question a week before your exam. Very often I get this question the day of. Hey, Professor Messer, I'm taking my exam in 2 hours. What can I do? I don't know. Get a good lunch. I'm not sure. There's not much you can do at that point. But when you're a week out, there are some very good strategies you can use to help determine if you are ready to take this exam. Let me bring up again this all-important document, the N10-008 exam objectives. This is where you should go with a week left, because this is your checklist. You should be able to go through every one of these bullets, and you should be able to explain it to yourself or to someone else. In our Discord earlier today, some folks were talking about using the voice functionality on your phone, the voice recorder, recording yourself, explaining what these are, and then playing it back. You effectively become your own audio course when you do that. But what that does is verify to yourself that you do know what that technology is, you know how that technology is used, and you can describe maybe how you've seen this technology used in other places. Then you can go, once you have that, in fact, you can see I've even highlighted some things on my PDF. Most PDF readers have some type of annotation. Once you are good with it, you can mark out things that, okay, I know layer 1 physical, I got it. We can mark that one out. Now layer 2, let's talk about the data link layer. And if you know layer 2 and you feel comfortable with that, you can mark through that one, check it off your list, and go through every bullet. If you get to a section you're thinking, well, here's a bullet talking about coaxial and RG6. I don't know if I'm really solid on what that does for me or when I would use it. Maybe I'm going to mark that one to be a little bit different. So we'll mark that in purple. So we can now go through the list of, all right, that's when I need to go back and study a little bit more. So you could go through this entire list in less than a day, certainly probably in an hour or two, and mark off everything that you really don't feel solid about. There's your study for the next week. Everything else you are able to explain. And you should, of course, keep that information fresh. But those are the topics that you could not explain to yourself. You could not explain to another person. You need to get those topics down before walking into the exam room. So that's a great place to go to use this entire set of objectives, which is free, to be able to know how much you're ready when you walk into the door. Am I really ready to take the Network Plus? Am I not ready to take the Network Plus? This is what's going to be able to give you that level of knowledge. I think a lot of us walk into certification exams not really knowing if we're ready. Well, with CompTIA, which is very unlike Microsoft and Red Hat and VMware and Cisco, CompTIA tells you everything you need to know, every bullet. You're never going to get this with those other companies, so enjoy this while it's here. So use those exam objectives because it will tell you if you're ready or not. Now, if you're not ready, let's say you went through this and half of these topics you just did not know. It's just a sea of purple where you've marked half of this exam objectives. Well, that's good feedback because that tells you maybe a week is not enough time. And as many of you know, you can go into your account and you can change the date of your exam as long as it's 24 hours before the exam time. So you can push this off another week or another week. You can keep changing the date. You can change it up until the point of your expiration of the voucher you used to schedule the exam or the first day that you scheduled it. You have a year from the time that you bought that voucher. So if you buy the voucher now on the 15th of May, you have until the 15th of May next year to take the exam. Even if I use the voucher today and book my exam for tomorrow, and then I realize, oh, I need to probably push it a little longer. I'm going to change it to next week. Now I'm going to change it the week after that and the week after that. Well, I can only do that 52 times because once you get around to the expiration, the original expiration date of your voucher, you can't push the exam any farther. So they effectively give you a year to take the exam for sure. That's going to be important. So absolutely have that available. and start working on those. It's pretty important. And I will also tell you, if you go online and you change the time and the date, you push that exam to be later. I get a lot of feedback from folks who go in and make a change to the time, and they come back and they log in when they think they've made that change to, and they realize the change never took, that it still had the original date of their original exam, which obviously they did not take. They missed that, which means your voucher is no longer valid. You're going to have to pay for the exam again. So I tell people, if you are making changes to this and you are trying to push that exam and change the date, go through the process of changing it, make a screenshot, submit the date change, log out, immediately log back in, and check to see if it took. Check to see if it really changed. Highly recommend that you double check that. Could save you hundreds of dollars if you just spend another 30 seconds logging back in and confirming that time change, that date change. Incredibly important, or you'll miss the time frame. Sometimes they will still allow you to take the exam on the newer date. They'll give you an update. Sometimes they don't. So be very careful about making those changes, that you really confirm it and that you have documentation that you have confirmed that that change really did take effect. I just see so many instances of that. I have to mention it. I don't know why that happens. I think it may be related to the processes that are in the application used to change it. That maybe it doesn't make it completely obvious, or maybe there's a final submit button you have to submit that's hidden somewhere on the bottom of the screen, or I don't know. But it somehow does not take for a large number of people. So don't be one of those folks. Always confirm and you'll be fine. I know we're at the top of the hour, but let's go through a couple of extra questions to be able to step through all of these. Question in the chat room said, these are always good to step through. Should you memorize both the OSI model and the TCP/IP model? Well, let's go to our exam objectives. These are the ultimate check of what we need to know. So if we go to the first section 1.1, compare and contrast the open system interconnection, OSI model layers, and encapsulation concepts. Okay, so OSI covered, check. What about the TCP/IP model? It's not here. There's no TCP/IP model on here. And you know why? Because we never use it. Out here in the world, we never use the TCP/IP model. It's the irony of networking. It's the irony of technology in general, where we use a model based on a protocol that we no longer use to describe protocols that we use today. We don't use the model based on the protocols we use today to describe the protocols we use today. It's just the way we do it. But we don't use the TCP/IP model. Nobody uses the TCP/IP model. The only time you will ever see the TCP/IP model is in a Cisco class. That's it. And once you leave the classroom, you'll never use it. I don't know why. Maybe they don't do it in Cisco anymore. Maybe they've dropped it too, which would make perfect sense. Nobody uses that model. We all use the OSI model. We always use it. So always go back to the exam objectives. If you're ever wondering, do I need to know this? Do I need to know this? Do I need to know this other thing? It's all documented. It's an enormous list that tells you exactly what's on the exam. And they stick to this list like glue. They very rarely, if ever, deviate from this list. And that's why I tell people, if you know all of these bullets, if you know all the port numbers and all the network services and all the architecture questions, all the connectivity options and everything else that's listed in here, you will pass your exam with no problem. That's how close they stick to these objectives. It is a valuable, valuable, valuable study tool. I cannot stress enough how important those objectives are. Well, I think I have stressed it enough, quite honestly. You're probably thinking that. I've stressed it a lot, maybe too much. But is it really too much? I don't think so. I think that's what you should do. Now, there's enough changes between the 008 and 009 that if you wanted to flip over to the 009 objectives, see it says 009 right there, not here, right here, 009 objectives. If you wanted to switch over to those objectives, you can download them from the CompTIA website right now. But you're going to have to find ways to study for what's different, because there is no 009 courses. There's no 009 books. There's no 009 videos. There's nothing there available. Got to wait until these come out. So another month or so, you'll start to see some things hit the market. And then another month or so, usually 3 months or so from there, you'll start to see some of the big publishers put all of their content out. We will, of course, we'll beat them to the punch there, because we're little and nimble, and we can put things on the internet whenever we want, which they haven't figured out how to do that yet. But my videos will be, you will certainly have a chunk of videos available on day one, if not all of them. And certainly course notes and the other content will be updated as well. And then there's the acronyms at the end. So quite a bit to go through. They're all there. You will certainly have those. It's a very good place to go, not just for your 008, but for your 009 as well. Let's do some more questions. If you want to ask any questions, there is the link. Go to professormesser.com/QA, and you can lock in your question into that list. It's a tab at the top where you can focus on any one of those. Let's see what other questions are in this list. So let's see what happens to be there. The Network Plus, there was a question about this. It's kind of a long involved question on here, so I'll just summarize it because I also saw it come up in the chat room, which was about the 009. It's about this newer exam that's coming out. And the question is about where you go to find that information, where you find 009 content. I think, not to repeat what I said earlier, but I guess I'll repeat it. The problem you'll find is that the material for the newer exam is simply not available yet. This is very, very common when a new series of the exam comes out. And that's why I often tell people, just pretend the 009 doesn't exist. Your 008 is available. You can take that exam until December the 20th. Focus on that version of the exam right now. It's going to be months and months before there is a significant amount of study materials on the market that give you a choice of what you would like to use. And I don't think that's a great way to study, being forced down any one particular road of study materials. I like it more when there are choices available. But that's why I tell people, just take the 008 exam. You have until December anyway, and you earn exactly the same cert. So why wouldn't you do that? Especially when we sit here today, we're talking today like both of them are currently available, but they're not. The 009 exam doesn't even exist. Technically, it's not even a thing. And until it finally hits that date and the exam is really available, it's pretty much vaporware until that date happens. So don't be in the camp of sitting around and waiting when you could be done already. I think that's another concept there, another idea, and being able to work through it. Other questions. Let's keep going down this list. We've talked about the retirement of the 008, which is in December. So all of that, by the way, you can always go to the CompTIA website. They always post very clearly in that section of the site for Network Plus what the current versions of the exam are and what the retirement dates are. So that's the official date. That's where I go to confirm the official dates. I have another set of calendars that I get to see behind the scenes because I am a platinum partner of CompTIA, but they don't share a lot of information. Just because I'm a platinum partner doesn't mean I have some type of special insight into what they are doing. I have to wait for them to post these things so that it's really official. So that's where I go, is I go directly to the CompTIA website to do that. It is the best way to know because that's where they're going to put those numbers there. And occasionally I'll find the numbers, the dates are correct, or maybe they need to change something, or maybe we need to consider different dates, or maybe we need to add dates for other languages. You'll start to see all of those changing and updating on the CompTIA website. That is your official source. Regardless of what I say, always go to the source. They will absolutely tell you the right place to go. There's questions on here about hands-on training and trying to get more practical, hands-on keyboard use, more real-world type hands-on scenarios. I think you should wait until if you're going to work on some of these, there are labs available on our site from CompTIA. Their labs are fabulous. The CertMaster labs are the ones that they use, that they've created. They're directly from CompTIA, and they are virtual environments where you can really work with a lot of very different systems in real time that are real Windows, real Linux, real networks, real packet captures. It's a fun way to work because you know you're not going to break anything. You don't have to set anything up. And they'll also have those for the 009. So you will continue to see those available. I think those are probably some of the best ways from a lab perspective to get more knowledge on what is expected of you and how these different concepts of the exam can be applied to some of these different technologies. And it's kind of fun to use them too. These labs are always fun because you can't break anything. You can capture packets, you can view the packets, you can turn the whole thing on, turn the whole thing off, and you aren't changing anything on your local computer because most of these just run inside of your browser. Other questions. Let's talk about what I'm doing though for Network Plus because that's what you're asking about. Calvin, we'll put both of these up. Calvin asks on the list, where's Calvin? There he is. Hey, Prof, can you create a CCNA course? Calvin's asking one of the top 10s that I get, I think. The CCNA is the Cisco Certified Network Administrator. It is a popular networking course from Cisco, as many of you are very aware. It is one that I have had on my list for quite some time. I used to have a set of CCENT, which is sort of a subset of the CCNA. I used to have some Cisco course notes back in the day. And we've always had our eye on creating additional study materials for CCNA. We currently don't have any, but I think it'd be great to have. It's one of those where we just need enough cycles to do it. I think it would be a popular one to have. It's certainly in our wheelhouse. It fits, it checks all the boxes. It would be great to have. It's really more about, well, physics. It's about how much time is available in the day to create content that would be valuable. And as you're probably aware, if you've looked at any of my courses, we like high quality in our courses. We spend a lot of time making sure the content is accurate to the exam and that it is accurate to the knowledge of that topic. To the point that people have sent me notes saying, I've read something else in a different location, a different provider, and they said this, you said this other thing. I say, yep, that's right. You should go ask them why they're wrong, because we've done double, triple, quadruple checking with these. Plus, there's not a lot of instructors out there that have used this content, that have been systems engineers, that have been network administrators, that have worked with supercomputers, that have connected wide area networks together, that have configured and planned and implemented next generation firewalls and created VPNs and authentication systems and integrated all of these things together, but I have. So I've seen these technologies in the field. I've implemented them. I know how they work at the packet level. There's not a lot of that knowledge on the internet making these types of courses. So when we talk about these protocols and we talk about these standards and we talk about the way that it's done, it's coming from the approach of this is how all of the companies out there that you know, all of these big names, all of the big brands, all of the largest networks in the world, this is how they're doing it. We try to get that across to you so that you have some perspective of why these topics are important to know. Otherwise, you'd be memorizing port numbers and trying to figure out, why am I spending all this time memorizing port numbers? This is so boring. I want to bring back to that. Here's why these are important. Here's where we see these. Here's how we would use them. Here's where we would put them into our firewalls. Here's where we'd see them on a packet capture. Here's how we implement these within the servers themselves. That's the type of content we want to bring to the table. And I think that's why a CCNA course, updated courseware needs to be just as same focus on quality that we have for all of our courses. So can I create a CCNA course? I can. Will I? I don't know. We'll have to see. After all of that, after that very long answer to the question, I don't know. We don't know yet. It's all about timing. Timing. We'll figure it out. We'll get there eventually. Karzinu asks, Will I be releasing practice tests for the 009? As many of you are aware, I practice tests currently for the Core 1A Plus exam, the Core 2A Plus exam, and the Security Plus exam. But I don't currently have an exam book for the Network Plus exam. I'd love to have one, though. It's not because I don't want to have one. It's another one of those physics problems. We have to have enough time to build out all of the questions that we want to put in there. And I do have a lot of work that would need to be applied towards that. When you first build that very first practice exams book, everything has to be created from scratch. So it is a multi-month endeavor to put that together. And this is me coming into the studio every day, creating the content, writing every day for a number of months to finally have the content available for you to use. So it's not a trivial thing to put together, but I think it's an important thing. And I would love to have one available to you. It's a little too early to know if or when that might be, but it is certainly top of mind for me. I want to be able to have that content available for you. I just need to find a way to make that happen. Currently, I don't have a good answer for you yet. So stay tuned. I hope to have an answer very, very soon, hopefully, and being able to have that there. Other things that we could work through, other topics that we have available. Other folks have submitted a number of different questions talking about the study group we had in the first hour. When I create the study group questions, I try to create questions that help us think about the topics we need to know for the exam. But the study group is just that. It's a group. We get together, we study together. It's not intended to be an exact replication or emulation of the testing experience. It's not intended to be an absolute mirror of the style or scope of questions you would get on an actual Network Plus exam. However, I will tell you, the style and strategy we use to step through these questions, some of these come pretty close. Some of these do pretty well. But the topics we cover are relatively high level. I don't dive into a ton of specifics on this study group for a couple of reasons. One, it's difficult to write a question with a lot of context and a lot of detail, and all of us be able to follow along and answer the questions and somehow make it worth our time. We could spend 30 minutes on a question if it's complex enough, and I don't want to do that in our live streams. But I also want to get across to you the topics that we cover, and I want to be sure that the questions and the answers that we put together have some nuance and scope to them so that any of these questions could potentially be the right answer. You'll notice on these live streams that each one of the answers are real things. I'm not making something up. There's no fake technology that I'm building into the question. They're all real questions with real problems that have a real context that correlate back to actual exam objectives. And from that perspective, I think they're very good questions to help us study. They're not intended to be an exam question that we are going through. Although, as I mentioned, some of them do end up being very similar to things you could find on an exam, but they're not intended to be. They're really intended to help us understand not just the topic the question is about, but I like to go through all the wrong answers so we know all of the topics the question isn't about. I think sometimes that's just as important. And that's why I give you kind of a broad set of questions, but we focus and dive into the specifics on each one of those because it's important to know that, even if you knew the answer immediately. And some of you do. You read the question, you're like, I know exactly what that is. Yep, there it is. Answer B, done. Got it. Finished. Got that one right. Well, that's not the point of what we're doing. I guess to a degree it is part of what we're doing. We want to get those questions right. But we also, when we get the questions wrong, we want to go through and understand why we got the question wrong. Because in many ways, that's the most important part. If we all got 100% on every one of the questions here, it'd be just a waste of time for all of us. I want to be sure we have questions that allow you to get the question wrong so we can circle back to why we got the question wrong. And we sort of close the circle with all of these. It's the learning process. You want to get a lot of these wrong so that you can prepare for what you don't know, learn what you don't know, and be ready the next time that topic is to appear. So I think that that if you did very well today, maybe what did we go through? 7 or 8 questions today. Maybe you got 6 of them right. Does that mean you're ready for the exam? It does not. It has nothing to do with your readiness to take the exam. I think what it does speak to is, obviously, if you got that many right, you did very well. You could be ready for the exam. But ultimately, if you want to be ready for the exam, you need to go, you know what I'm going to say, to the exam objectives. That's where you need to go. These are absolutely free. You can download them from the CompTIA website. They will tell you whether you're ready to take this exam or not. Go back to the objectives. They are the best barometer for you. They will tell you immediately whether you're ready or not. And there's always new things to do. There's always interesting things to work on. There's lots of home labs you could put together. You could follow along at our command line video and do the same thing we do. When I'm pinging those IP addresses, you can ping those IP addresses. When I'm doing a dig or an NS lookup, you can also do a dig and an NS lookup to those same parameters. So there are things you can do from the existing videos and from the exam objectives that will help you prepare a little bit better, but you need to use those objectives to be able to make that determination. Don't just look at one set of videos or just look at one particular study group or any single training material. I think it's important that you combine these together, that you get a broader scope of what you should study from, because videos teach you a certain way, books teach you a certain way, hands-on teaches you a different way. These are all different ways to learn, and you need to take advantage of all of them if at all possible. Well, we're well past our time frame, our top of the hour, but I think it was worth the time going through a number of your questions about Network Plus and other aspects of the exam. Hopefully you got something from our first hour Q&A. And if you did enjoy this video, I would invite you to give it a thumbs up, to even subscribe to our YouTube channel as we work our way towards that 1 million subscriber mark. Thank you for being here on this live stream. Feel free to come back a week from today. We have our Security Plus study group with all brand new Security Plus questions and a lot more to go through. And we'll also do an after show if you have additional questions about that certification, other IT certifications, or anything about technology in general. Thank you so much for joining us. We love doing these live streams, and we, of course, couldn't do it without you. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on the Network Plus study group. Thanks, everybody.